Imagine waking up to a notification from your bank and seeing a $2,000 deposit from the US government. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, the White House just said they're committed to making that happen, not as a rumor, not as a wish, but as a proposed national tariff dividend payment straight to Americans' pockets. And for a family of 4, that could mean $8,000. But here's the twist. The money isn't supposed to come from taxes. It's meant to come from tariff revenues, the money collected when other countries pay to send goods into the US economy. So today, let's break down what's real, what's political, and what it would actually take to make this possible. The proposal, according to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, President Trump wants to send out $2,000 checks funded directly from tariff income. The administration is exploring all legal options, she said, to make this a reality. The idea is to turn America's tariff profits into a kind of yearly bonus for citizens, a dividend for being part of the strongest economy in the world. But here's where it gets complicated. Can a president really just sign an executive order and send out billions of dollars? Probably not. Most experts agree that the Constitution gives Congress control of the federal purse. So, without congressional approval, an executive order would almost certainly be challenged and blocked. That means, to become real, this has to pass through Congress, either as a standard bill or through something called budget reconciliation. It's a shortcut process that lets a party pass budget-related items with just a simple majority. The politics behind the promise. The timing of this plan is no coincidence. The next midterm elections are right around the corner. If checks like these were to arrive in mailboxes before the election, that could shift public sentiment in a huge way. Think about it, $2,000 direct payments, labeled Trump's tariff dividend. For many households still struggling with high prices and credit card debt, that would make a big difference. But for Democrats, that's a problem. Why? Because it could hand Republicans a wave of goodwill right before voters head to the polls. So even though Democrats often support stimulus spending politically, they might be hesitant this time, as the transcript explains. Would Democrats want a check going out right before the midterm elections in 2026 with Trump's name on it? Probably not. Meanwhile, not every Republican is on board either. Some are already warning that sending new checks could increase federal debt, now sitting above $38 trillion. So while the president might be committed, his own party could become the biggest obstacle. The numbers that matter. Let's talk about the math, because this is where the entire proposal stands, or falls. If every American earning under $100,000 were to receive a $2,000 payment, that would reach roughly 150 million people, costing around $300 billion. Now, how much tariff money does the government actually have on hand right now? According to the Treasury Department, as of the end of September, total tariff revenue stood at about $195 billion. That leaves a funding gap of roughly $105 billion. So how would that gap be filled? The administration could promise to use future tariff revenue. Because the Treasury forecasts around $3 trillion in tariff income over the next decade. But even then, paying out now would likely mean borrowing, adding to the national debt. Could it come as tax relief instead? Here's where things get even more interesting. Some in the administration, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, hinted that Americans might see their $2,000 dividend, not as a check, but as tax relief. That means, instead of money showing up in your account, you'd save money by not paying certain taxes. Trump recently promoted the idea of no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and even potential deductions for car loans and Social Security taxes. For many workers, that could mean an extra $2,000 a year, but not for everyone. If you don't earn tips or overtime, you'd see little benefit. Critics call this approach a bait and switch, technically worth $2,000, but unevenly distributed and harder to feel in real life. This is why so many are insisting on actual checks. A flat payment feels fairer, simpler, and more immediate than a complex tax rule that might only help a portion of the population. Who would qualify? The eligibility limits haven't been confirmed, but history gives us clues. During the pandemic stimulus rounds, individuals earning under $75,000 and couples under $150,000 received full payments, with smaller checks going to higher earners. If Trump's proposal raises that limit to $100,000 per person, it would include most of the working population, about 150 million Americans. But one huge question remains. Will dependents get the same amount? If every adult and child received $2,000, a family of 5 could get $10,000. But if dependents only receive $1,000, that drops to $8,000. And if it's a flat $2,000 per household, it's just that $2,000 total. Those are massive differences, and they'll determine how expensive this plan really becomes. Can it actually pass? We've seen this movie before. In 2021, President Biden's American Rescue Plan passed with $1,400 checks for individuals and $2,800 for married couples. That bill passed without a single Republican vote through the reconciliation process, proving it can be done if one party holds together. So yes, it's technically possible for Trump to pass a $2,000 check bill the same way. If Republicans control both chambers of Congress and stay unified. But even then, the bill would have to clearly define who qualifies, whether dependents are included, where the funding comes from, and how it affects the debt ceiling. Every one of those details could spark another round of negotiations, amendments, and political games. The reality check. Let's be honest, this proposal sounds appealing, but it's still mostly a political idea on paper. The White House says it's committed, but there's no signed bill, no published plan, and no final math. If it moves forward, it'll take months to pass through committees, economic reviews, and multiple votes. The best-case scenario: late next year before any checks arrive, assuming everything lines up perfectly. And while some experts believe it could stimulate spending and lift consumer confidence, others warn it could widen the deficit, fuel inflation, or simply never materialize beyond campaign speeches. Final thoughts. So where does that leave us? Right now, we have strong words, but weak details. A $2,000 tariff dividend funded by tariff profits, potentially arriving as either a check or a tax cut. If it passes, it could reach around 150 million Americans, cost about $300 billion, and even touch off political fireworks just before the midterms. But if it doesn't, if Congress resists, or the courts intervene, it could become yet another big promise lost in political noise. Still, for millions of families facing rent hikes, grocery bills, and debt, even the hope of a $2,000 payment is enough to grab attention. And that might be exactly the point. Outro. What do you think? Should everyone, including dependents, get the full $2,000? Or should it be limited by income or family size? Would you prefer a direct check or a permanent tax break on your tips and overtime pay? Share your thoughts below. And if you want updates as soon as the official bill or eligibility list drops, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is only just getting started.